Well, thanks for jumping on with us today, everyone. We're going to be talking to Diane Benscoter from Antidote, and we're just going to be talking about all things psychological manipulation. We're going to be talking about people's attention, both online and in the real world. And we're going to just see where we go with this conversation. So thank you for jumping on with me today, Diane.
It's a pleasure.
Yeah, we've had a couple of conversations before, but for the benefit of everyone watching, just tell us a bit about yourself and your organization to start.
Sure. So a little bit about myself. I'll start with a little bit about my personal background. I joined a religious cult when I was 17, and I was a member, really dedicated member for 5 years. And then my family had me deprogrammed. That's what they called it during that time. It was exit counseling, and it worked. And I realized that the whole thing was a big lie, and that I wasn't following the second coming of Christ, but it was actually a fraud. And so I left and became a deprogrammer. I started helping people leave these kinds of groups. And there were a lot of cults during that era. It seems like when there's a lot of social unrest, when the world is confusing, that's when vulnerability for being manipulated in this way is high. It's that intersection, I think, that is important to understand about psychological manipulation, because when I was really concerned about the Vietnam War, there were people going off to war and it just seemed wrong, and I wanted to do something meaningful, try to stop the war, and all the music was talking about that, and so my vulnerability, my naivety was really high. So when I got out of that, I really wanted to help other people leave these cults. And so during that time, deprogrammings were non-voluntary. Family members would set up a situation, get a house. Let's go look at Uncle Bob's new house. And then when the person went in, it was welcome to your deprogramming. You're not leaving. These people are here to talk to you. And people would stand in front of the doors and windows and yeah. And so I did that for like 5 years. And but then I was arrested for kidnapping. Right. Because one of those went really wrong, and it is holding someone against their will. And
Sure.
I did not go to prison. It was a plea bargain. And so anyway, I hung up my deprogramming shoes after that, and eventually wrote a book about that, about those years in the cult and as a deprogrammer. And then eventually I was invited to give a TED Talk, and thought, well, I really want to now dedicate myself to this work. I'd had a career in between, raised a daughter, and so I kind of found myself back in that world. And I did a project and went around, took a year of and went all over and interviewed former terrorist members, former cult members of all kinds, former gang members, and asked them all the same questions about what pulled them in and what it was like leaving, and found the stories, even though the settings were so different, what went on a psychological level was exactly the same for everyone. So I started a nonprofit after that. That was just on my own project. And so I started Antidote. It's a nonprofit that's dedicated to helping people understand psychological manipulation, which, again, we find ourselves in a world that's so hard to understand a lot of things. And it's that social unrest is really high, confusion about who to trust is really high. So that high vulnerability is the same as it was back in those days, or even worse. And what's really scary is that technology has allowed people who want to take advantage of people on a psychological level, who understand that vulnerability and want to use it for power, money, or influence, especially money, have a super highway to do this. It used to be that you had to spend time with people, have them over dinner, have them, try to pull them into your little cult and live with you and things. And now the same psychological mechanisms are taking place online, and it's still influencing people, and it's still taking advantage of those psychological needs, the needs for community, the needs to feel like you understand the world. Those are really taken advantage of, and people become really addicted to the feeds and such. And so our organization is really trying to help people understand how to recognize and resist those mechanisms, not just the lies, not just the disinformation. This is kind of upstream from all the work on disinformation.
That's really interesting. Do you feel like there's a similarities between the people who are vulnerable to the cults, back during the Vietnam War era that you said, and people today? Or do you think it's easier for people to be psychologically manipulated now? Do you think there's more people are more vulnerable today through the methods they're using, or do you think that it's a similar type of person that's most vulnerable to that?
Well, human beings haven't changed. We all have the same kind of human needs for understanding the world, or for making sense of the world, for feeling like you're connected with other people that are like-minded. And so those basic human needs are still there. I think in a way, though, the world is even more confusing now. It's really a scary world we live in, with climate change and with so many factors that really cause concern to so many people. And young people, I've found, that are in their 20s and 30s aren't really sure what to do with their life. They don't see a path toward a happy, successful future as very much. And so young people are lost in a way, and everyone is feeling like it's hard to deal with the changes that have gone on. And technology has caused a huge change in the world and in how we relate to each other. It's changed what communities are. It's changed how we interact with other humans. And so I think it's really hard for our psyches, for us as people, to get our needs met, and to know how to get our needs met, and what is safe and what isn't safe, and who to believe and who to distrust. And one of the main techniques that have always been used, if you want to control someone, you really have to discredit institutions.
Okay.
So you discredit science, you discredit government, you discredit educational organizations, our colleges and universities. And if you can discredit all of those things, then you become the authority. Then it's addictive. You become dependent on certain people that are trying to influence you. And so it's the same mechanisms. Human beings are the same. It's just a different way that it's going on. And in some ways, it's, I think, more dangerous.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the phrase that if you don't believe anything, you'll believe anything. And so by tearing down people's belief structures, and Nietzsche predicted this in the mid 20th century, didn't he? He said that people are going to need, there's an absence of a sense of belonging or purpose, and people are going to look for flagpoles to stand near. Do you think that the algorithms, you mentioned feeds just now, and one of the silly examples I use when I'm talking to people is that if you go online and see a post saying that pineapples are going extinct, you might think pineapples aren't going extinct. That's silly. But then if you see that same information 10 different times, you see 10 other posts that are saying pineapples are going extinct, even though fundamentally you believe that wouldn't be the case. But once you've seen it enough, you start believing it. And is this the danger, do you think, with these algorithmic feeds, where you get caught in an echo chamber, particularly with the amount of volume that people can do now with bots and AI agents to promote the idea that pineapples are going extinct, and any other insidious message that, beyond my silly example there of pineapples going extinct? Do you think this is a real key problem where people have been pushed into this issue from the algorithmic feeds and the volume now?
Absolutely. I do think that's exactly what's going on. And again, it feels so confusing, and there's such an overload of information. So people get siloed into specific areas where, okay, I trust this influencer, or I trust this feed or whatever, I feel comfortable here. And then things get repeated enough. That's how conspiracy theorists, they get it. One thing interests them and they think, yeah, I've always thought maybe there were UFOs. And then they start hanging out with people, and those things, the algorithms push that over and over and over and over, because wherever your attention is gained, then it's held. You want, from the people pushing these, that are benefiting financially, they want to hold your attention. It's the attention economy. And so how do you hold someone's attention? You feed them the things that they're interested in. And so that gets repeated over and over. And pretty soon, like you say, you believe that pineapples are going extinct. It's because everybody else is saying it. The people you trust are saying it. And the place that you go all the time keeps telling you it. So,
yeah. I'm sure you've seen Louis Theroux's documentary on the manosphere. Have you seen this
I have not seen that, but I know I definitely follow things about the manosphere.
Yeah. So it's an excellent documentary. I highly recommend it to anyone who's watching this.
Watch it. Yeah.
Louis Theroux is just an excellent documentary maker generally. But in here he goes and meets these different influences in the manosphere. And do you think that there's a cultural shift now where there's more people willing to let go of moral compasses in order to hustle, in order to gain that financial momentum? Do you think that's become a more prevalent cultural problem, or do you think it's just the same number of bad apples there's always been? They just have more powerful tools
now. One of the things that's kind of a complex topic, but psychological manipulation spreads. It's self-spreading. And so in cults, for instance, once you join and you believe Sun Myung Moon, like I did, is the second coming of Christ, then I wanted everyone to believe that.
Yeah.
And so I became a recruiter, and that's what people do. And so once you buy into something, it feels empowering, and you feel like you've found the truth. And so you spread it. It's self-perpetuating. And so I wouldn't say there's more bad apples in the sense. And the thing that's really, I think, important to understand is that you say bad apples, but when I was recruiting people into the cult that I was part of, it wasn't because I was malicious. It was because I truly thought it was better and true. And so that self-perpetuation is what the bad actors count on. And so at the top, it's power, money, or influence. That's what people want. And they lack empathy. The people at the top, they don't care who they hurt. But underneath that, the self-perpetuation causes many people to grow these things that are dangerous and harmful. And so it's not that they've lost their moral compass. They really think that they are doing what's right underneath,
And I guess that makes it more powerful because they believe it's the truth. And you can tell,
Yes,
they're not lying. You can see in their eyes.
right.
They believe it in their heart, body, and soul, don't they? Yeah,
Yeah.
what. What do you think are some useful? What are some useful quick pickup tools or techniques that people can, someone who's listening to this can just think about for when they need to keep an eye out for psychological manipulation? What do you think are the key giveaways that were helpful for people in terms of this stuff?
So recognize and resist is kind of a plan, a hope for like changing things. And so recognition is so important so that people can resist the addictive algorithms and all the things that are really hard to resist. But once you understand, no one wants to play the fool. I hold on to that hope. No one wants to be the person that got scammed or that got had or that got psychologically manipulated. So I think that once people recognize the mechanisms, and it's hard to understand them, but first I think you have to realize that human beings make most of our decisions on a psychological level. And so you have to be aware that, oh, that's pulling me on an emotional level. I'm feeling really agitated and angry now, because of what they're telling me. That's really getting my emotions. If something is really kind of changing your emotions, and if something is pulling you in to believe very strongly about something, you have to think, are they trying is there a reason behind that? Are they trying to take advantage of me in some way? So it's that first awareness that exists. There are clearly people out there that it's not about just the lies. It's that they are after you on a psychological level. So once that clicks for you, that they're trying to take advantage of your emotions, your feelings, what you care about, what you believe, then you can start recognizing when they're trying to do that. And, because it's sort of a complex topic, learning about psychological manipulation is something that Antidote, the nonprofit that I founded, is really focusing on. We're building a learning environment where people can take courses, they can go through an online course, they can join groups. A lot of people who care about a loved one that they see has changed, they spend all their time online, they've really become a different person, don't know what to do. And so there's a place to go to learn more about it. It really happens in like 5 phases typically. There's the vulnerability phase, where you're feeling lost in the world, or you don't know what to believe, or life is confusing, or you're depressed, you just broke up with someone, whatever. So that's the vulnerability stage. And then the second stage is where you start getting pulled in. So that's when you start noticing something that makes you feel a little better. You start finding some people, and there's nothing necessarily wrong with that, except that there's an agenda. If there's not an agenda, that's great. But then the third phase is you're fully committed. You're like bought into this. You're part of this, whatever it is, the manosphere, a conspiracy theory, or a scam of some sort, but you've really bought into it. You believe it strongly. And now you're out there trying to pull other people in. And then the next phase is you start seeing kind of through it. You start thinking, wait a minute, this doesn't seem quite right. And there start being red flags. That's a good point to help someone if you get the chance to talk to them. And then there's the recovery part after you realize you've been scammed, to try to figure out, well, who am I now and how to protect myself? That's the kind of 5 phases of psychological manipulation.
And part of me wonders, and hopefully you can shed this light on this. Is there sometimes a sense of avoiding embarrassment when someone's really advocating for something, and you explain to them very clearly how this is not the case? Do they sometimes think, double down on that because they've committed to it already. And even though they might have some doubts in the back of their mind here, their mouth will keep going with the thing that they've already espoused, or the thing they've already evangelated already. And there's someone who's wanting to help have to work past that, because no, like a lot of people don't like admitting they were wrong.
Oh
And so
no.
if you're trying to help someone, you've got to wait for them to. They might push back harder, even though back here in the back of their mind they might be thinking, "Oh, I'm not sure about this, but I've said it now, and I need to commit to what I've been talking about." You know.
Yeah, I think that's true. On a deeper level, I think what it is that exceptionalism, feeling like you found something really powerful, is it's a real high.
Yeah.
It feels really good to think you're smarter than everyone else. And so you don't want to let go of that. It's not just that you dig in deeper, because now you're hooked with that. It's given you meaning. It's given you something that you're proud of. And so to let go of it means more than just admitting I was wrong about that fact. It's about your identity. It's become your identity now, and not just an identity, but that exceptionalism just feels so great to think that you're smarter than everyone else. And so of course you dig in. You don't want to be wrong about that, because it means that there's shame in it. And not only do you not want to give up what feels good, but you certainly don't want to go into a shameful place. So it really is, if you're trying to help someone, you really have to have a lot of empathy and kindness, because they're not bad people and they've been scammed. And so helping them understand that maybe they've been psychologically manipulated, and that there's no shame in that, is something that takes a little bit of skill.
And if you are a person who's trying to help someone who you believe has been psychologically manipulated, what are some of the protective things that person can do for themselves if they start going in to help this person? Are there suggestions that you make for those people to help keep that person safe psychologically and emotionally as they're trying to help someone else who's in that situation? Do you have any recommendations that Antidote have for that kind of thing?
Yeah. I kind of think of them as in a little bubble, but there's divots in there. And so instead of trying to crash through it, if you can plant seeds and think of it as a marathon, not a sprint, and just give them something to think about, and that won't push them into high defensiveness, but will maybe be a kernel that they won't quite be able to get out. And more of those planted will eventually kind of take root, and it will break open itself. But also, I always, instead of saying you're in a cult or you're in a conspiracy theory or you're just so wrong, to what you really want them to understand is that there is a possibility that, like many, many people in the world, you're being psychologically manipulated, because psychological warfare is a real thing. And it's, it happens to really good people often, the people that are searching for truth, people that actually care about things, and they really want a better world. Those are the people that are often drawn in to the most extreme types of psychological manipulation, because they're good people, because they care. And whether it's left or right politically, or it's this or that, the belief system isn't so important. The belief system is just a tool in a way.
And I read a study the other day that suggested that ChatGPT 4, so we're on now 5.6, but ChatGPT 4 could accurately predict the outcome of social science experiments just based on the hypothesis. So they would give the study's hypothesis and said, what do you think the results are? It wouldn't know the results at the time, and they had the results, and it was accurately predicting the results. Now, in my mind, that means that in theory, it's possible to reverse engineer it, which is that you could say to an LLM, I want this result from a social science experiment. What would I have to do? in order to get that result. And that's reverse engineering psychological manipulation on a colossal scale. So with that in mind, do you feel like I mean, you were talking about cults in the 1960s. That would have been almost instinctive levels of psychological manipulation from the cult leader. They would have instinctively tried different things and had different success and fine-tuned their own personal way of psychologically manipulating people. They would have had to learn it. Whereas now we have access to these colossal machines that we've just demonstrated can predict outcomes of social science experiments. Does that worry you? Does that worry you that now people don't have to, these people who are the bad people at the center, at the top of these things, they don't have to learn it now. They can go and get given a psychological warfare cheat sheet, effectively, and materials and techniques. I mean, do you think that that's something that we need to be cautious of as we go through this LLM development?
Oh, extremely. I think that's really scary. When anything can be scaled so quickly that takes advantage of people on a psychological level, it's really very scary. And I think the thing that frightens me the most is the extremes. And that has, when you can convince people, when you can weaponize people, then, and people feel like they're willing, when you can get people so angry that they're willing to kill or be killed for something, and also dehumanization, when you can convince people that large swaths of the population aren't even human and the world would be better if they weren't there. That's the kind of messaging that is, it's just the biggest atrocities in human history have occurred because that's been able to be pulled off.
Yeah.
Because there's been a way to convince large groups of people to hate others. And the divisiveness, the us versus them, is always a key message in a lot of the narratives that are coming out. And that's really frightening, because, and that's taking advantage of the deepest part of human existence to get people to the point where they would take or give their life.
Yeah, but talk. Let's. I mean, it's all super scary and it's all deeply worrying. But talk to me about some of the successes. Talk to me about some of the successes that Antidote has had. Give us this. Give us the ray of hope. Talk to us more about the specifics of what Antidote's doing and some of the successes you guys have had and these other initiatives you've got going. Tell us a bit more detail.
Okay. Yeah, hope is such a great thing in the world today. Well, I really have a lot of hope, because one of the things that we pull from is public health models, population level models, frameworks, what has worked in the past. Take cigarettes, and it used to be the culture that all the movies, everything, you could smoke on airplanes, and then public health made it possible for people to understand that it causes cancer. And still people smoke, of course, but most people understand that it causes cancer. And that was because you can affect you can help people understand things at a population level. Okay. And so there's been numerous public health kind of examples like that. And so we have brought in a lot of public health experts to help us create a framework for how to solve this problem of a population level psychological manipulation happening. And so one of the key things is to help community leaders. The people trust certain trusted voices are who needs to carry the messaging. I can do all kinds of marketing, and that's maybe something, but if it comes from trusted voices, faith leaders, influencers, people that have the trust of their communities, we can teach those people about psychological manipulation, really put them through train the trainer kind of things, and help customize messaging for their specific communities. And that's all with tuberculosis or any kind of public health efforts. You have to work in communities. You have to understand the variations within communities. It's, different populations, different ethnic groups, all the different communities, and work with those people and help them understand how to help their communities recognize and resist psychological manipulation. So that's one of our main efforts right now. Is we're calling it the AIM, the Attention Integrity Movement, and we call it attention integrity because it's a positive thing. It's instead of the scary thing, it's like everybody wants attention and integrity, meaning I want to be in charge of my agency. I want to be in charge of who I give my attention to. It's an attention economy. Everyone's after our attention. They want to get our attention, hold our attention, and then influence us. And so we should all learn to have attention integrity and be in control of who we give our attention to and recognize when it's a scam. When somebody's trying to get something from us, when someone sees us as a possible asset to their wealth. And, we're all just like little assets to them. And so that's the attention integrity movement. And then we have a learning environment that we're building where people can come and learn have a deeper understanding, especially like if they have a loved one. We've piloted many different things as far as how to help people who are concerned about someone they care about. And we've learned a lot about what works and how to do that. And so we're building a learning environment that has different learning paths depending on what your needs are. Right. If you're an influencer, a journalist, a loved one, or someone who's just walked away and are trying to rebuild your own agency after being taken advantage of, there's different paths for all that. And honestly, we're still building all of that. Like many nonprofits, we're struggling to find the funding to pay for staff to do all of this. But I'm really encouraged about what we've accomplished so far, and the kind of, the responses from when we talk about this to people. And so I'm really excited about a way forward.
It's incredibly important work. I think the people haven't realized the extent to which psychological manipulation has been put out onto everyone's life, and I think online is where it's most prevalent. When we spoke before, I think we were talking about different adverts. Even adverts now from well-established brands are engaging in some psychological manipulation techniques, as opposed to just telling about the product. It's everything else that goes alongside that, isn't it? I mean, it's the learning pathways sound fantastic for people. And where can people find out more about what you guys are doing at Antidote?
It's antidote.ngo, like non-governmental organization. So antidote.ngo is our website, and that's the best place to go. If someone wants to collaborate, please contact us. We aren't trying to do everything ourselves. We know there's lots of amazing organizations and really good people out there that are concerned about the same things. And so any way we can collaborate with anyone else doing this kind of work, we want to do that. So contact us through the website. There's a contact form there.
Yeah, brilliant. I mean, it's been fascinating, worrying, but also hopeful at the same time. So thank you for talking us through all that. And just again, for people who are watching this, it's antidote.ngo, and we'll put a link to that down in the description of the video as well. But amazing work that Diane and her team are doing. So I do highly recommend that people go and have a look at it, and support Antidote. And if you have someone in your life that you are worried about, reach out and try and help those people. I think it's really important. So But Diane, thank you for jumping on with
Thanks
us
so
today.
much, Ross. Really appreciate it.
We'll talk again soon.
Okay.